Hello, and welcome back to the History Informer. This is part 2 of my series on POW camps in Michigan during the Second World War. In this video, I will be describing the lives of the POWs outside of their daily labors. It is important to remember that POWs did not work every single hour they were present at the camps. Prisoners undertook various activities to combat feelings of boredom and homesickness. When the prisoners first arrived in American prison camps, there was tension between the guards and the prisoners. However, as time passed, relations between the prisoners and the guards warmed up, as described in letters from the prisoners. The morale of the prisoners was noticeably higher once they got over their initial feelings of homesickness after being transported thousands of miles away from their homelands. The activities that the prisoners undertook during their free time depended on the locations of the camps they were stationed at. However, a common theme among many of the camps was the decoration of barracks and tents by the prisoners. The POWs used scraps of wood to create planters where they grew their own vegetables and installed wood flooring in their tents. An example of POWs decorating their surroundings would be the POWs based in Camp Osso, who has quoted from Gregory Sumner's book, Michigan POW Camps. In World War II, the Germans at Osso used scrap lumber to build floors under their tents as a barrier from moisture and the concrete slab foundation. Everyone contributed his civilian talents as carpenters, mechanics, and cooks to soften the surroundings and approximate the comforts of home. These homemade gardens allowed the prisoners to supplement their rations during meal times. And the POWs would make use of their abundance of food available to them and would openly seek out opportunities to trade with local civilians for food. Camp personnel and locals were impressed by the abilities of the POWs to make incredible meals with the limited ingredients they had available. Donations from the Red Cross and other local communities provided the POWs with musical instruments, sports equipment, and art supplies. These donated items were used for a variety of activities, including creation of artwork and decorating their surroundings. Among the most popular activities were card games, ping pong, and pool. During the summer months, swimming in local ponds was an extremely popular activity in the camps located near bodies of water. For the camps located in the Upper Peninsula, skiing and the building of snowmen were staples of winter activities. This was common at one of the Upper Peninsula camps, Camp Sidnaw, where the isolation of the camp required the POWs to engage in a variety of activities to entertain themselves during the long winter months. On the campgrounds, there was a large soccer field, and inside one of the dining halls was a ping pong table that was used during their downtime. During the holiday season, celebrations were organized by camp personnel and the POWs. While prisoners were given the freedom to celebrate the holidays, established Nazi holidays like the celebration of Hitler's birthday were banned. But holidays like Halloween and Christmas were sources of major joy and relaxation for the POWs. And camp personnel would work with the POWs and plan for large holiday parties. For example, Halloween parties would include costume making and a large feast. Despite their relatively easy treatment of the POWs by American authorities, accidents and deaths did occur during the war. On October 31st, 1945, the POWs at Camp Blissfield had prepared for a large Halloween party which would feature them showing off their homemade Halloween costumes. Unfortunately, tragedy would result in the cancellation of the party. That afternoon, a group of POWs were returning to the camp from a nearby field, and while crossing the train tracks, the vehicle they were in was struck by an oncoming passenger train. The following passage describes what happened is from Gregory Sumner's book, Michigan POW Camps in World War II. The vehicle was dragged 40 feet along the right-of-way. According to the headline story in the Blissfield Advance the next day, men were sent flying upward of 300 feet from the point of impact. The bodies of 3 of the POWs were caught on the pilot of the engine and carried about 1,800 feet down the tracks, the Advance told its readers, past Ireland's alfalfa mill. 16 of the prisoners were killed, and the 20-year-old American guard Edward B. Logren was killed as well. The victims of the crash would later become known as the Blissfield 16. When news reached the camp of the accident, the Halloween party was canceled, and a few days later, funeral services were held for the victims of the accident, and the dead were buried at a cemetery located at Fort Custer. Each of the 16 coffins were draped in the German flag, and the grief and shock among the other German POWs was shared by the staff of the POW camp. During the burial ceremony, the POWs were given military honors that included a moment of silence. After the Second World War, records on American POW camps were destroyed by the War Department. In the absence of official government records, much of the information available is from first-hand accounts of prisoners and other individuals involved in the camps. Here is an example of a personal reflection of life inside the POW camps. This reflection is from former POW Gerd Linderman and provides an intimate look into the lives of the prisoners. Linderman was part of the first group of German and Italian prisoners who were captured in North Africa and shipped to the United States. His experience provides us a look into the different styles of life across POW camps. Originally, Linderman was held in a prison camp in Colorado along with other officers of the German Army. He describes life at that camp as being full of full military discipline that was enforced by the other prisoners. When he was moved to Camp Lakewood, located south of Grand Rapids, he assumed role as commander of the POWs due to his status as an officer in the German Army. He established a routine with his fellow prisoners at Lakewood that comprised of working out problems amongst themselves, establishing a basic hygiene regimen, and enforcing these requirements on each other through forced bathing of those who did not comply. They called the forced bathing ritual the Holy Ghost and was carried out by dunking the offending individual into a tub of water. Lindemann recalls in his memoirs on how he and other attorneys handled a group of suspected SS soldiers who were causing trouble in the barracks. It was official American policy to place SS soldiers in separate facilities from German Army prisoners. In order to prove that these men were SS, they had to look for a specific SS tattoo that all SS personnel had on their bodies. In order to do this, the POWs performed the Holy Ghost ritual on the suspected SS troops, and the discovery of said tattoos confirmed the suspicions of Linderman. Once identified, the problematic prisoners were moved by American authorities to the designated SS holding facility at Fort Custer. Prisoners often had issues with fanatical fascists in the camps throughout the state. However, the radicals were handled differently inside the camps. But prisoners did not always have to deal with hardline radicals. And the prisoners, when not having to deal with that issue, went about the businesses of entertaining themselves. These POWs made use of the skills they had acquired from their pre-war lives. For example, prisoners who were barbers before the war could practice their peacetime job occupation with other prisoners. Others, as mentioned earlier, would embrace a farming lifestyle and supply camp cooks with fresh produce grown themselves. But as easy life was in the POW camps, there were attempts by some prisoners to escape. While rare, there were attempts by some POWs to escape the camps, but most of the escapees were captured within 24 hours. One notable incident occurred during the summer of 1944 when 2 German soldiers escaped the POW camp in Osso with the aid of 2 local girls. The group had met working at a local factory and had arranged to meet up at the end of the day. The girls provided the transportation and the location for where they would be when the POWs escaped the camp. The group was captured the next day without incident after the younger sister of one of the girls alerted the authorities of what had happened. After initially being arrested, the 2 girls were not charged with any crime and were released. News of what had happened led to an outcry of criticism over the decision to not charge the girls with a crime. Later, the girls, Kitty Case and Shirley Druce, were rearrested and charged with conspiracy to defraud the government. After a trial, the girls were convicted and sentenced to 1 year and 1 day for Druce and 1 year and 3 months for Case. The reliable work performed by the POWs helped foster positive attitudes towards the camp and the local population. And this positive attitude also dissuaded more POWs from making attempts to escape. Beyond their actions at work, the POWs showed respect for the families in the area. One notable incident occurred when the POWs at a local camp had heard the news that another family in the region had lost yet another child in action. They showed their respect for the loss by arriving at the residence and forming a single solemn line. They walked down the street, halted at the house of the family, snapped at attention, and offered a long silent salute, then afterwards executed an about-face and returned back to the POW camp. When later asked about the incident, one of the POWs stated that the reason for doing this was to acknowledge the sacrifice of the dead despite being enemies. When the POWs returned to Europe after the end of the war, many remained in contact with their former employers in Michigan. In the website, The Military History of the Upper Great Lakes, there is a series of accounts of post-war correspondence between a former POW and a member of the Kraft family who owned an orchard where the POWs had worked. In 1946, the former POW Karl Heinz Kleff sent this letter to the Kraft family. Very honored Mr. Kraft, best greetings from my home. Sends you, Karl Heinz K. First of all, I would like to know how you are. I wish you the best and hope you are all well. I would like to know how Merlin is and if he came back all right from the war. I like to think about the nice time we could spend on your farm. Karl Heinz Kleff would later say in the letter a request for food from the family to be sent to his address in Germany to ensure that his own family would have food to eat. It was noted that the Kraft family did send food baskets to the POWs who had requested them. This correspondence and others between former POWs and the friends they made in Michigan illustrates how both sides saw each other as human beings, despite being on opposite ends of one of the darkest periods of human history, and how mutual respect and friendship can still grow between opposing sides. This was a brief look into POW camps in Michigan during the Second World War. If you are interested in learning more about this part of Michigan history, I have provided links and titles of the sources used in this video in the description down below. Thank you, and I hope to see you again on the History Informer.